You ever walk into a place and feel like your soul doesn't belong there? Not like you're lost. No, I mean like something inside you just curls up and goes cold the second you cross the threshold. That was me the first time I stepped into Containment Sector 9. They didn't call it a prison. Of course not. Bureaucrats never use words that mean what they sound like. It was a biological observation facility, research complex, security clearance needed, triple check at every door, white coats everywhere pretending not to see the blood on the floor from the last incident. They brought me in as private security, ex-military, 23 years in before I got my knee blown out by a pressure trap in South Africa. They said I had the right disposition. That meant I didn't ask questions, didn't flinch at weird, and knew how to handle myself if something inhuman got rowdy. My name's Thomas Kane, and I'm going to tell you about the girl behind the glass. About the night I broke a dozen federal laws, betrayed my badge, and risked everything I had left for a pair of eyes I'll never forget. It was my first shift when I saw her, and she didn't make a sound. She was in Sector D, Unit 4, behind a thick, transparent wall that stretched ceiling to floor. Sterile lights buzzed overhead. The room had no bed, just a platform molded out of the wall like a cold bench. No blanket, no privacy. Just a single water dispenser, an automated feeding hatch, and surveillance that never blinked. They called her Delta 4. She was tall, maybe 6'5" if she stood straight, though I never saw her do it. Her skin shimmered between shades of twilight blue and frost gray, depending on how the lights hit it. Long, silvery white hair, braided at the sides with some kind of metallic beads that clicked when she moved. But it wasn't any of that got me. It was her eyes, big, wide, luminous, not glowing like headlights, not freaky like horror movies. Just deep, like twin wells holding galaxies and grief all at once. She looked up at me when she heard my boots hit the floor. No snarl, no hiss, no fear. She looked like a little girl who'd gotten lost in a war she didn't start. There was something so unanimal about it that I stopped in my tracks. The clipboard said xenoform, level 3 telepathic potential, semi-bipedal, non-aggressive, unverified speech comprehension. But what I saw wasn't a test subject. I saw someone. I finished my round like nothing happened. 15 minutes later, I walked past her unit again. And again. For the next 4 hours, I looped that corridor more than necessary. Didn't say a word to her. Didn't dare. But every damn time she was watching me. Not creepy, not intense. Just watching. Like I was the only channel on a screen she couldn't change. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. I kept my distance. But every night I worked Sector D, I found myself walking slower. Longer pauses near her room. Eventually I started carrying a pencil and a little notepad. Doodling helped calm the shakes I still had from the war. One night, on impulse, I sketched a star. Dumb, simple 5-point thing. I held it up to the glass as I passed. She blinked. Then she raised her hand. Not fast. Carefully, like someone who didn't want to scare a deer. She touched the glass and traced a star right over mine. That's when I knew she understood. After that, it became a ritual. Every shift I drew something. A tree, a heart, once a bird. She'd trace it with a finger. Then she'd draw something back, always with her finger, always slow and careful. Sometimes it looked like symbols, sometimes like flowers, spirals, suns. I started bringing books, keeping them tucked in my vest so the cams couldn't see. One night I cracked open a children's picture dictionary and held it up to the glass. The word was friend. Under it, a boy and a girl holding hands. She stared at it a long time, touched her chest, then the glass, then me. They called her Delta 4. I called her Kitten Eyes. It was dumb, I know, but it stuck. She had that same wide-eyed look you see in stray animals right before you feed them for the first time. Not trust, not hope, just a flicker of something that might become both if the world didn't screw it up again. I started noticing things they didn't put in her file, like how she'd hum when she was alone. Low, melodic tones that shifted in pitch like the wind through a canyon. They recorded it and filed it under nonverbal sound emissions. Idiots. She wasn't emitting. She was singing, or how she'd arrange her food in patterns. The researchers thought she was playing, I knew she was writing. It wasn't random. It was repetition, symmetry, structure. She was trying to talk, but no one was listening. I started watching the scientists more closely. They weren't evil, just clinical, detached. Dr. Fenster, the lead, treated her like a curiosity. Passive interaction, he'd say. Limited cognitive function. Moderate mimicry. They weren't interested in her, just her biology. One afternoon, I caught them discussing tissue extraction. We've stabilized the subject long enough. It's time we see what's underneath the dermis. I felt something boil up in me then. Not anger, protectiveness. I'd seen what that kind of language meant. In the war, when someone started talking about a town like a target zone, it meant you stopped seeing the people inside it. That's how you justify turning homes into rubble. Kids into statistics. They were about to do the same to her. That night, I stayed behind after my shift, told the next guy I was covering an extra round. I walked right up to her cell and put my hand against the glass again. This time, she didn't just mirror me. She laid both hands flat, pressed her forehead to the barrier, and closed her eyes. I couldn't breathe. I knew then. I had to get her out. But I didn't know how. I spent the next week learning every inch of that facility, where the cameras were, when they rotated, who changed the logs, what time the guards swapped stations. Old instincts came back. Planning, recon, strategy. I even got a little help from Reese, an old army buddy who now ran logistics for unofficial cargo. No questions asked. He thought I was joking at first. You want me to smuggle what? She's not a what, Reese. She's someone. Tom, you really believe that? I didn't answer him. I didn't need to, because I'd seen her eyes. You don't fake that kind of sorrow. You don't teach it to animals. You don't design it in labs. She felt things, and that meant she deserved a choice. I went to her cell again 3 days later, held up a drawing of a key, then a door, then a path, a stick figure running. She looked at it, slowly traced the path with her finger, then looked me in the eyes and nodded. It was the smallest motion, but it hit me like thunder. She trusted me. God help me, I didn't know if I deserved it, but I was going to earn it. I started bringing her more than drawings, music, hooked a speaker through my badge comm. Just snippets, instrumentals mostly, soft jazz, piano, some old Louis Armstrong. She swayed to it, not danced, just moved, like the notes stirred something old inside her. One night I played What a Wonderful World, and she cried, not loud, just a single tear tracing down her cheek. They didn't program that. No test tube makes you weep at the sound of a trumpet. She was real, and she was breaking, and I was out of time. The next morning I got pulled aside. Dr. Fenster again. You've been lingering at D4 too often. She's cooperative. She's irrelevant. Your job is perimeter security, not companionship. What's the harm? He gave me a look I've seen 100 times. Cold, dismissive, bureaucratic. She's not a person, Mr. Kane. She's a data point. Act accordingly. He turned and walked away. And that's when I decided. That was the last day she'd spend in that cage. I didn't care what it cost me. I didn't care if I burned for it. She was coming out because someone had to see her, and I already had. I didn't sleep the night I finalized the plan. I laid on my back in that stiff bunk the facility called quarters, staring at the ceiling fan, timing each rotation like a metronome, counting down to war. My fingers twitched like they did before combat drops. That strange ache of anticipation, the kind that only hits when you know your next decision might destroy your entire life. They told me to watch her, so I did. And what I saw wasn't something to monitor. It was something to protect. The escape window was razor thin. Thursday, 3 o'clock hours. Maintenance rotated the coolant lines in subsection B, which caused a 20-second comms blackout on the lower level. Long enough to fry the camera feed with a loop if timed right. Reese had run me a dummy access badge registered to a deceased logistics tech. Clean. No alerts unless someone actively searched for his ID, which they wouldn't. Not unless things went wrong. I wore my uniform like any other night, walked my rounds, kept my breathing steady, pretended I wasn't hiding a stun baton with a custom energy regulator spliced by Reese. Non-lethal, but hard enough to knock out a bear. I passed Sector D like usual. Kitten Eyes was sitting cross-legged, braiding a strand of her own hair. She looked up as I approached and froze. I showed her the drawing again. This time I held up a real key card. She didn't move. Not a twitch. Not even her eyes. So I whispered the first word I'd ever spoken to her. Tonight? Her lips parted. No sound came out. But I swear I saw a flicker of light in her irises, like a sunrise peeking through storm clouds. I finished the round. Made sure the other guards were clocking out on time. Left a coffee cup half spilled in the security lounge so they'd think I was inside. Then I slipped into the blind spot near the decontamination chamber, popped the vent plate, and crawled 30 feet through ductwork that smelled like metal and regret. When I dropped down in front of Unit 4, my hands were already shaking. I swiped the dummy badge. The door hissed. It wasn't loud, but it might as well have been a gunshot. She didn't move at first, just stared at me like I was a ghost. Then she rose, slow, graceful, terrifying in the way a storm cloud can be beautiful. Her feet made no sound on the floor. She came close, stopped inches from the doorway. I reached out a hand. For a moment, she just looked at it. Then slowly, she placed her palm against mine. Her skin was warm, warmer than I expected, and trembling. We ran, not fast, not yet. I kept the pace measured, quiet. The route I mapped took us through service corridors and storage bays. Every 30 feet, I tapped into the security feed through a portable scrambler. Looped the hallway view behind us. It wasn't perfect, but it'd give us 20 minutes, maybe 30 if the gods were kind. She followed without a word, didn't ask where we were going, didn't flinch at alarms that hadn't sounded. Just moved, like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. We got as far as the vehicle hangar before things went sideways. A tech wandered in early. Some intern, no older than 20, holding a tablet and a half-eaten sandwich. He looked up, saw us, froze. I pulled the baton without hesitation. He opened his mouth. She moved first. One moment she was behind me. The next she had him by the shoulders, gently, almost reverently, and whispered something in a language I couldn't understand. He blinked, dropped the tablet, and sat down like he'd forgotten how legs worked. Unconscious, peacefully. I looked at her. She just nodded. Right. Mental interference. Level 3 telepathic potential, my ass. They had no idea what she was capable of. We climbed into the truck, a beat-up cargo hauler used for deliveries to satellite stations. Reese had left the keys in the compartment, just like we agreed. I fired it up, and the ancient engine grumbled like a dragon waking from a nap. She sat beside me, hands folded, silent. I pulled out of the hangar at 3:08. We cleared the south gate before anyone noticed the breach. The sun was still hours from rising, but something in my chest had already begun to thaw. We drove. For hours, no checkpoints, no drones. Reese had rigged the route to ping false locations on the tracking grid. Somewhere around mile marker 47, I looked over. She was asleep, head tilted against the window, arms curled around herself. I didn't wake her, didn't speak, just kept driving. God, she looked so small then, so human. We made it to the safe house by dawn. It was an old ranger cabin tucked into the Cascades. Nothing fancy. Wooden walls, fireplace, backup generator, and one bunk. I laid her on the bed, stepped outside, and vomited in the bushes. That's when the adrenaline wore off. That's when it hit me. What the hell had I just done? I'd kidnapped a government asset, attacked a technician, committed enough felonies to warrant a life sentence, all for a girl I'd never heard speak. But I'd seen her, and sometimes seeing someone is more honest than words could ever be. I went back inside. She was sitting up now, looking at me, and then she spoke. Her voice was soft, melodic, like warm wind through chimes. You are not afraid. I almost dropped the flask in my hand. You can talk? Her lips twitched, almost a smile. I could always talk. No one wished to hear. Jesus, how long have you understood me? Since the fourth drawing, the one of the bird. I laughed once. It sounded more like a sob. You never said anything. She tilted her head. You never asked. She had me there. I sat on the floor across from her, legs aching, mind spinning. What do I call you? Not Delta 4. That's not your name. She looked out the window for a long time. Finally, she said, Vasari. I let the name roll over my tongue. Vasari. She nodded. What do they want from you, Vasari? Her eyes darkened. They wish to understand what they already destroyed. My people, my culture, my voice. They took us in pieces. I was youngest, easiest to break. I clenched my fists, not out of anger, out of helplessness. Why didn't you fight back? She looked at me, and for the first time her voice turned sharp. I did. Every day. I stayed alive. We sat in silence. Then she asked quietly, Why did you help me? I didn't have a clean answer. I still don't. Maybe because she reminded me of the young recruits I lost, of all the people we couldn't save in the war, of what happens when we let fear do the thinking. Or maybe it was something simpler. You looked at me like I was real, I said. She blinked. You are. Those two words cracked something in me I didn't even know was still fragile. You hungry? She nodded. Very. I cooked what I could. Eggs, toast, the old-fashioned kind, from a pan over a wood stove. She ate with delicate, precise movements. Like she wasn't just consuming food. She was rediscovering the act of being fed. That night, she fell asleep on the couch while I sat by the window, gun on my lap, heart in my throat. I didn't sleep. Not because I feared her, because I feared what came next. The world wouldn't let us stay hidden forever. The agency would come looking. When they realized I wasn't kidnapped but complicit, they'd stop treating her like an asset and start treating her like a threat. And I didn't have a plan for that, but I knew one thing. If they wanted her back, they'd have to come through me. We lasted 8 days. 8 days of false peace, of stolen moments around a fireplace while the world outside kept breathing down our necks. Vessery learned fast, too fast. She picked up how to use a stove, fold clothes, even turn the crank on the radio like she'd been born in a cabin, not engineered in a cell. Her mind wasn't just sharp, it was hungry. Every question I answered led to 3 more. Why humans build houses instead of hives? Why we keep dogs but not deer? Why we lie? Why we kiss? She asked about that one night, after we'd eaten cold beans out of a can, and I'd read her an old paperback book out loud like some relic from before the war. Why do your kind press mouths together? She'd asked, curled up in the corner of the couch like a cat who wasn't sure if it wanted to be pet or left alone. I couldn't lie to her. She'd know. It's complicated, I said. Instinct, emotion, comfort, love. She tilted her head. You do it with anyone? No, I said, and then I added more quietly, not anymore. She didn't respond, but the look in her eyes lingered, like she was cataloging the idea, dissecting it, maybe even hoping for it. The next day I taught her how to shoot. Stupid maybe, risky, definitely, but I figured if they ever caught up with us, she deserved a fighting chance. The first time she held the revolver, she examined it like an artifact. This ends life, she said, not a question. If it needs to, I answered. She fired once, missed the tree by a mile, fired again, and clipped the bark. By the 6th shot, she was hitting center mass like a trained sniper. You're kind, she murmured. You make tools that kill better than you make tools that heal. I didn't argue, I just said, yeah, that's the truth. Then came day 8. The morning started quiet, too quiet. Birds had stopped chirping. The wind had that wrong kind of stillness, the kind that says someone's watching. I stepped outside with the rifle slung over my back and walked the perimeter. Saw tire tracks in the wet dirt. Not ours. Fresh. Reese had warned me the blackout loop wouldn't hold forever. Too many variables. Someone would notice the discrepancies eventually, and when they did, they'd triangulate us. I went back inside. Vasari was standing by the window, still, eyes wide. They've found us, she said, not fearfully, not surprised, just certain. How many, I asked. She paused. 5, approaching from the west. 2 more on the ridge. I didn't ask how she knew. I just believed her. She turned to me. We must go. No, I said. We stand. Her jaw tensed. You cannot win against them. Not to win, just to buy time. For you. Something broke in her face then. Not tears. She didn't cry like humans did, but her shoulders trembled. You are not responsible for me. Bullshit, I snapped. I made this choice. You didn't ask me to break you out, but I did, and I'm not letting them put you back in a cage. Silence fell between us. Then she stepped forward, put a hand on my chest. I will not leave you, she said. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just about protecting her anymore. I loved her. God help me, I did, and that changed everything. I handed her the rifle. You take the back. If they breach, you go out the east door and don't stop. And you? She asked. I slow them down. She didn't argue, didn't waste time with emotion. But right before we split, she touched my face. Just for a second, light as a feather. You are my only sky, she whispered. Then she was gone. I sat up near the front porch, crouched behind the old woodpile, pistol loaded and heart trying to punch out of my ribcage. The first agent crept down the slope with military precision. Didn't see the tripwire I'd set using monofilament and a rusty bear trap. Snap, scream, one down, then gunfire. They returned it immediately, lit up the trees like it was a war zone. I rolled to cover, fired twice, missed. Third shot hit one in the thigh. They didn't yell this time, too well trained. They moved like ghosts, coordinated, calculated. One threw a gas canister. I yanked my mask on just in time. Didn't see the guy who flanked left. He tackled me like a freight train, and suddenly I was on the ground, fighting for breath, eyes going dark. Then came a flash of white light, and screaming. I came to with blood on my collar, not mine. The agent who tackled me? His eyes were glazed over, mouth still open in a silent scream. He wasn't breathing. Standing over him, calm as snowfall, was Vasari. Her eyes glowed with light. Didn't I tell you to run? I gasped. I told you. I will not leave. Another agent burst through the door behind her. Before I could shout, Vasari turned, raised one hand, and the man froze mid-motion. His gun dropped. He clawed at his own throat, then dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Jesus, I whispered. I will not go back, she said. 3 more were circling. I aimed, shot one through the shoulder. Another ducked, but she felt him, turned, and with a flick of her fingers, he convulsed violently and fell. We were winning. No, she was winning. But then, a single high-pitched whine split the air. I knew that sound. A dart. Tranquilizer. The agency didn't want her dead. Just down. I turned. Too slow. She stood still, eyes wide. Dart embedded in her side. She staggered. I caught her before she hit the ground. No, 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 Vasari! Her breathing slowed. Her hand gripped mine weakly. You must run, she said. Not without you, I choked. She smiled. Just barely. I do not regret it. And then her body went limp. I looked up. The final agent, helmet off, stood 10 feet away, holding the gun like he just shot a deer. Not a person. He looked disappointed. Didn't want to hit her, he said. Orders. I lifted my pistol. He didn't flinch. She's not property, I growled. She's classified, he said. You're in deep shit, soldier. Then bury me in it. But before I could pull the trigger, he sighed, lowered his weapon, and said something I didn't expect. I'll give you 10 minutes. I froze. What? I didn't see anything, he said. Didn't get a clean ID. You were never here. Now get her out before command shows up. Why? He glanced down at Vasari, then said quietly, because she looked at me like a person, not a target. He walked away. I didn't wait to question it. I carried Vasari back to the truck, got us moving before her pulse faded more. I drove for hours, no direction, just away. Found an old vet's safe house near the border, isolated, off-grid. She woke 3 days later, groggy, pale, but alive. The first thing she said was my name. Thomas. And that's when I finally broke. I kissed her, not out of impulse, out of truth. She didn't flinch. She kissed me back. And for the first time since I'd met her, she looked free. It's been 9 months since we disappeared. 9 months since I broke her out of that sterile glass hell, since I turned my back on everything I used to be, a soldier, a tool, a man who followed orders. Now I live off-grid with a being most of humanity still doesn't even believe has rights. But out here, with her, she's not an alien. She's Vasari. And me? I'm not a hero, just a man trying to love someone the world tried to erase. We rebuilt a life in pieces. The safe house wasn't much. Bare floors, solar panels, cracked pipes. But she made it feel like home. She strung wind chimes from the porch, planted something in the soil that wasn't from Earth, and made it grow like it had been waiting its whole life for sunlight. We read every night. Sometimes I read to her, sometimes she read to me, voice awkward but full of fierce pride. She asked fewer questions now, not because she'd stopped wondering, but because she finally trusted the answers could wait. And we slept in the same bed. Not out of fear, not out of urgency, but out of choice. She liked to curl up against my chest, one arm wrapped around my ribs, her forehead against my heartbeat. "This," she whispered one night, "feels like peace." I smiled against her hair. "It's just a creaky mattress, Vess." "No," she murmured. "It's you." Sometimes I forgot what she was, not because she hid it, but because she never weaponized it. She could still move things with her mind when she wanted, and her senses, sharper than any human. She could hear a plane 5 minutes before it flew overhead, smell a change in weather before a drop hit the ground, but she used all of it, gently. There was this one moment burned into my brain. We found a wounded fox near the tree line, leg caught in an old rusted snare. I moved to shoot it. Mercy, clean. But she stopped me, kneeled beside the terrified creature, whispered in a language I didn't understand. The fox stilled, then let her touch it. She didn't heal it. She wasn't magic. But she calmed it, eased the pain somehow, long enough for me to free the leg and wrap it. It limped away, turned once, and stared back at her. "You don't have to fix everything," I told her after. She didn't look at me, just said, "If I don't try, I become them. But peace never lasts, and secrets don't stay buried." We were burning leaves in the back one night when she froze, eyes wide, nostrils flared. "They're coming," she whispered. I didn't ask how she knew. I ran inside, grabbed the emergency radio. "Reese," I called into the static. "They found us." Seconds later, his voice crackled through. "Hold tight. You've got an asset." "Don't call her that." He didn't apologize. "I'll stall them. But if they deploy Black Phoenix, you're on your own." I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. Black Phoenix was the failsafe team. No recovery, no trials, just silence. Absolute. We packed fast, grabbed the essentials. Vasari moved like a ghost, her face still, but her hands trembling. We made it to the ridge by nightfall, abandoned the truck, went on foot. 3 hours in, we heard the whine of drones. Then came the voice, projected from the sky like a god issuing judgment. "Surrender the subject. You will not be harmed." She looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met her, really met her, I saw fear, not for herself, for me. "I won't let them take you," I said. "They don't want me anymore," she said softly. "They want to end me. Let them try." We reached the old transmitter tower just past midnight. I knew it was risky to send a signal from there, but we had no choice. She helped me wire the beacon. Then she did something unexpected. She took my hands in hers, placed my palm over her chest. "I want you to know," she said, "that no matter what happens, you change me." "Vess, no, listen. I was made to adapt, to study, to mimic. But when I met you, I didn't just learn. I felt. I didn't know what loneliness was until you left that first night. And I didn't know what it meant to be alive until you kissed me." I couldn't speak. She leaned up, kissed me one last time. Then she stepped away from the tower, out into the open. and raised her hands. They came in fast. Lights, guns, everything. But she didn't fight. Not this time. She glowed, like starlight was leaking from her pores. They hesitated. And in that moment I sent the signal. A broadcast. Not encrypted, not hidden. Just the truth. Footage. Testimony. Data. The full record. Everything they did to her. Everything she was. A living being with thoughts, emotions, pain, rights. The world would know. And the agency? They couldn't unring that bell. They surrounded her, barked orders. One of them raised his weapon. She didn't move. I started to run, but a hand stopped me. Reese. He appeared like a ghost, gun lowered. I bought you a window, he said. I stared at him. You knew? Always, he said. But sometimes a man has to wait until the system cracks before he bets his soul. Will it be enough? He didn't answer, but he handed me a drive. Proof, he said. Use it if I vanish. Then he was gone, and I saw them lower their guns. They didn't shoot, because in that moment, Vasari wasn't a threat. She was a witness, a survivor, and too many cameras were watching. It's been 6 weeks since that night. The world's still reeling. Some people think it's a hoax. Others are marching in the streets, demanding laws, demanding rights, demanding justice. Vasari is alive. They couldn't contain her again. Not after everything. Public pressure cracked the system like a dropped mirror. Now she's technically under protection. Not free, not jailed. Observed, guarded. But I see her every week. We talk through a thick glass window. She still smiles with her eyes. And every time she leaves, she places her hand to the glass. I do the same. One day I believe we'll touch again. Not through barriers, but for real. Because love, it doesn't care about species. It doesn't wait for permission. It fights. And no matter how long it takes, I'll keep fighting for her. My alien girl with the kitten eyes. The one the world tried to cage. And the one I'll never stop calling mine.